The sky over the planet Cathar burned like fire. Thick clouds of smoke twisted and churned, reflecting the red-orange light of distant explosions. The ground shook with every impact, sending rocks and dirt flying. Kale, a human soldier, crouched behind a shattered wall of concrete, his breathing steady but tense. Around him, the war raged. Humans and Xylians clashed in a fight that had lasted decades. Each side had suffered unimaginable losses, yet neither would give in. Kale's eyes scanned the battlefield. He had seen friends die. He had seen cities turn to rubble. The stench of burning metal and charred bodies made him feel sick, but he had learned to push it aside. His mind focused on survival, on duty, and on keeping the little spark of hope alive that, maybe just maybe, there could be an end to all this bloodshed. Then he heard it. A faint, desperate sound like a soft cry, almost drowned out by the chaos. Kale froze. The sound came again, closer this time. It was not human. It was small, frightened, and unmistakably alive. His heart clenched. He didn't want to hear it, yet he couldn't ignore it. Slowly he moved toward the sound, staying low and careful. Avoiding gunfire and falling debris, dotting the ruins of what had once been a Xylian village, he saw it. A small child, no more than 5 cycles old, trapped under a fallen beam. Its skin shimmered with pale violet, its wide eyes filled with terror, and its tiny hands clawed at the dirt, trying to free itself. Kale's chest tightened. This child was the enemy, yet it was helpless, innocent, and afraid. He had faced soldiers before, grown warriors trained to kill. But this was different. Kale glanced around. Xylian forces were nearby, patrolling, searching for survivors or stragglers. If they found him with this child, they would kill him without hesitation. And yet, Kale's instincts screamed at him to act. Slowly, he crawled forward, feeling the weight of every decision. His hand rested on the beam. With a deep breath, he gritted his teeth and lifted with all his strength. The beam shifted just enough for the child to crawl free. The child whimpered, its small body trembling. Kale scooped it into his arms, holding it close. "It's okay. You're safe now," he whispered. He wasn't sure if it understood his words, but the tone carried warmth, and the child's trembling slowed slightly. Around him, the war continued, but for this small moment, it was silent, just him and the child. He knew what he was doing was dangerous. His comrades would not approve. They had orders, rules, and the hardened logic of survival. A human soldier could not afford to be sentimental, not in this war. Yet, Kale felt a strange, powerful urge that he could not ignore. He could not abandon this child to die. To leave it in the ruins would be cruel, and Kale's humanity, though battered and weary, would not allow it. He looked up at the sky. The red clouds reflected his own storm of emotions: fear, anger, hope, and determination. Every sound of gunfire reminded him that time was running out. He had to move, to find a safe place, to protect this tiny being that depended entirely on him. Kale tightened his grip, the child pressing against his chest, and began to run, ducking behind walls, leaping over rubble, and dodging laser fire dot as he ran. He felt something he had not felt in a long time, a sense of purpose beyond the mission, beyond the war. He was not just fighting for survival or for his comrades. He was fighting for life itself, for innocence, for the fragile hope that perhaps humanity could be more than just warriors and killers. The child's soft breathing reminded him that even in the midst of violence, there was something worth protecting. Kale's mind raced. Where could he go? How could he keep the child safe? The enemy was all around, and yet he moved forward, driven by something deeper than fear. Something stronger than orders or strategy. He was driven by the simple, undeniable truth: this child was alive. And he had the power to keep it that way. In that moment, as he sprinted across the scarred battlefield, Kale felt the weight of the world, but also the fragile spark of hope. He did not know what the future held, or how the Xylians would react when they discovered the child was alive. But he knew one thing for certain: he would protect this small life, even if it cost him everything. And somewhere deep in the ruins, the child's violet eyes stared up at him, trusting him completely. Kale whispered softly, "I will keep you safe. I promise." For the first time in a long, long time, the battlefield felt a little less dark. Kale moved cautiously through the ruins, the Xylian child pressed tightly against his chest. Every step was calculated, every shadow a potential threat. The war around them continued. Explosions shook the ground, and distant screams of battle carried on the wind, but Kale blocked it out. Focusing only on the tiny life he had promised to protect, the child's breathing was uneven, trembling with fear and exhaustion. Kale glanced down at its violet eyes, wide and innocent, staring up at him. He didn't know the child's name, and it didn't understand his words, yet there was a silent understanding between them. It was fragile and helpless, yet entirely trusting of him. That trust weighed heavily on Kale, pressing on his conscience more than any battle order or command ever could dot around him. Human soldiers moved through the battlefield, scanning for survivors and enemy combatants. One of his comrades shouted, "Kale, get back, leave it. Focus on the mission." Kale shook his head sharply, his jaw tightening. Leaving the child was not an option. It didn't matter that it was the enemy. It didn't matter that the humans saw it as a liability. This child was alive, and Kale's humanity demanded he protect it, even if it meant defying orders or risking his own life. He ducked behind a crumbling wall, breathing hard. The child whimpered again, clutching at him with tiny hands. Kale wrapped his arms tighter around it, whispering softly, "I won't let anything happen to you. I promise." His voice was calm, even though inside, his heart raced like a drum. Every second spent moving forward was a second closer to being discovered by Xylian patrols. Every shadow could hide a deadly enemy. And yet, he could not abandon this small, trembling life. Kale thought of all he had seen in this endless war: villages burned, families destroyed, children caught in the crossfire. He had buried friends and comrades alike, grown numb to the endless cycle of death. And yet, holding this child stirred something inside him. Something long forgotten: hope, compassion, a reminder that life, even in the darkest moments, was worth fighting for. He found a narrow alley in the ruined city, crouching low as he moved. The child clung to him, its body shaking, and Kale whispered more words of comfort. Though it couldn't understand him fully, the tone, the warmth, the gentle sway of his body calmed it slightly. For a moment, the battlefield, the screams and the chaos faded away. It was just Kale and the child, two souls clinging to life in a world of destruction. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Kale realized they needed shelter. He scanned the ruins and found a collapsed building with walls still standing enough to provide cover. He dragged the child inside and crouched, pressing it close. He tore pieces of his jacket to wrap it, making a small blanket. The child buried its face into his chest, shivering. Kale felt a pang in his chest, a mixture of sorrow and determination. He could not fail. Not now. Not ever. He thought about the Xylian soldiers who would search for the child. They would not see him as a protector. They would see a human enemy who dared touch one of their own. If they found him, they would kill him without hesitation. And yet, Kale felt no fear strong enough to make him abandon the child. He was willing to face death to keep it safe. That realization brought him a strange clarity. In this endless war, he had a purpose beyond fighting and surviving. He had a mission that transcended nationality, species, or orders. He had a life to protect. Hours passed slowly. Kale stayed awake through most of the night, keeping watch while the child slept fitfully against him. He listened to every sound: the distant rumble of battle, the occasional scuttling of debris, the whisper of the wind through broken walls. Every shadow could be danger, but he was ready. The child's soft breathing reminded him that even in the middle of war, innocence could still survive. By dawn, Kale made a decision. He would not return to his unit, not yet. He would lead the child to safety first. Only then would he consider his own survival. It was a risk, perhaps the greatest of his life, but Kale's resolve was unwavering. He had promised this child safety, and a promise, he knew, was not broken lightly. He rose carefully, holding the child close, and stepped into the light of a new day. The battlefield was still raging around them, but Kale's heart was set. No enemy, no army, no force of war could sway him from his choice. He had made his decision. He would save this child, no matter what the cost. And in that decision, a small flicker of hope lit the darkness of Cathar. A reminder that even in war, humanity could shine. The morning sun broke over the battlefield, casting long shadows across the ruined city. Kale moved quickly but silently. The Xylian child pressed tightly against his chest. Each step was careful, measured, and deliberate. He knew that every sound he made could alert the enemy. Every shadow could hide a patrol. The city was no longer just a battlefield. It had become a maze of danger, and Kale was navigating it with one fragile life in his hands. The child clung to him, its small fingers gripping the fabric of his jacket. It trembled slightly, looking up at him with wide violet eyes. Kale whispered words of comfort, though he knew the child could barely understand him. Still, he spoke, letting the calm tone of his voice carry the promise of safety. "We'll get through this. I won't let anyone hurt you." Cale's mind raced. He had seen too many horrors in his life: villages burned to ashes, families torn apart, children caught in the middle of wars they did not understand. Yet this child was different. It was innocent in a way that reminded him of why he had joined the fight in the first place, not for glory or victory, but to protect life. And now, holding this tiny being in his arms, he realized that protecting it was worth more than any mission or order he had ever followed. But Cale knew he could not stop. The Xylian forces were relentless. Scouts and patrols moved through the ruins, searching for survivors, and especially for the child. If they found him, they would not see a human soldier acting out of compassion. They would see a threat, a kidnapper, a murderer. Cale's jaw tightened. He had no choice but to keep moving, to stay ahead of the hunt. He darted from cover to cover, weaving through broken walls and shattered streets. Occasionally he paused, listening. The faint hum of energy weapons, the distant shouts of soldiers, and the echo of boots on debris reminded him of the danger surrounding them. Yet, with every heartbeat, he felt a deep connection to the child, a growing determination that no force could shake. The child whimpered again, its voice soft but urgent. Cale paused and knelt, setting the child gently on the ground. "It's okay. I'm here," he said, brushing dust from its hair. The child pressed closer to him, seeking warmth and reassurance. In that simple act, Cale felt a surge of emotion. Protecting this child was no longer just about survival. It had become personal. It had become a promise that he would honor, even if it cost him everything. Cale continued moving, taking paths he knew the enemy would not expect. He climbed over rubble, slipped through narrow alleyways, and hid in shadows that offered even the slightest cover. The child's small hands clutched him tightly, and Cale could feel the rapid beating of its tiny heart. He whispered softly, "Hold on. We'll find a safe place." Hours passed like this, tense and grueling. Cale was exhausted, his muscles aching, his mind alert to every sound. The child, though frightened, seemed to sense his determination. It began to trust him more, relaxing slightly when he spoke or adjusted his hold. Cale realized something profound. Though they were from two different worlds, enemies by birth and divided by war, a bond had formed. A bond stronger than fear, stronger than hatred, stronger than any weapon. Suddenly, a sound made Cale freeze. Footsteps, deliberate and heavy, echoed nearby. He pressed the child against him, ducking behind a crumbled wall. The Xylian scouts were close. Cale's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He could not let fear decide their fate. Every instinct, every skill he had learned on countless battlefields, came alive in that moment. The scouts passed by, their attention elsewhere, and Cale let out a silent breath. He held the child tighter, feeling its small body against his chest. "We're not safe yet," he murmured, "but we will be. I promise." The words felt heavier than usual, filled with more meaning than he could explain. They were a vow, a lifeline, a thread of hope weaving through the chaos of war. As the sun climbed higher, Cale found a partially intact building that offered shelter. He ducked inside, placing the child on the floor and examining the space. It was small, but safe for now. He scavenged bits of debris to reinforce the walls and make a small hiding spot. The child settled next to him, exhausted, and Cale kept watch, alert for any sound of pursuit. Hours turned into night. The city fell quiet, but Cale did not rest. He knew the hunt would continue, and that the enemy would not stop. Yet, even in the darkness, he felt a small, stubborn spark of hope. He had saved this child once, and he would do it again. He would protect it, no matter what. In that quiet night, with the stars peeking through the shattered roof, Cale whispered softly to the sleeping child, "No one will take you from me. Not them, not anyone." And for the first time in many cycles, he felt that even amidst war and destruction, there was a reason to keep moving forward, a reason worth fighting for beyond survival itself. The next morning, Cale felt the chill of dawn on his face. The city was quiet now, but he knew it was only a fragile silence. Somewhere out there, the Xylian forces were searching, relentless and unforgiving. He held the child close, its small body shivering against his chest. Every sound, the whisper of wind, the crack of distant debris, made him alert. Suddenly, movement caught his eye. Across the ruined plaza, he saw them, a group of Xylian warriors, their shimmering armor glinting in the morning light. Cale froze, instinct and fear screaming in his mind. He could not outrun them all. The child pressed against him, whimpering softly, sensing the danger. Kale's jaw tightened. He knew they would not leave until they found the child. The time for hiding was over. From the group, a figure stepped forward. She was massive, taller than any Xylian Kale had ever seen, with iridescent skin that seemed to shift in the sunlight. Her eyes were bright and piercing, filled with fury and grief. She was the mother, the queen of this group. Every step she took seemed to shake the ground. Her gaze locked onto Kale immediately, and he could feel the weight of her wrath like a physical force. "You dare touch my child!" Her voice roared, reverberating across the ruins. The words were sharp, full of anger and disbelief. Every Xylian soldier around her straightened, waiting for her command. Kale's heart pounded, but he did not back down. He could not. He held the child closer, shielding it as best he could. "I saved her," Kale said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "I won't hurt her. I only want to protect her." The queen's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, it seemed she would strike him down without hesitation. Her hands glowed with energy, ready to unleash a weapon that could end him instantly. The soldiers tensed, expecting the attack. But then something unexpected happened. The child stirred. It looked up at Kale, its violet eyes wide, and whispered something in a trembling, strange language. The queen's gaze softened, just for a second, as she realized the child was reaching out, not to her, but to him. That moment shook her more than any battle ever had. Rage and grief warred inside her, but the sight of her child safe, her child trusting this human. It was a revelation she had not anticipated. Kale did not move aggressively. He knelt slightly, keeping himself smaller, letting the child's trust speak louder than words. "I only want to keep her safe," he repeated. "I swear it." The queen's hands lowered slightly, though tension still rippled through her. She looked down at her child, then back at Kale, searching his eyes. There was fear there, yes, but also honesty, determination, and something else she did not expect: compassion. The kind of compassion she had long thought impossible from a human. The soldiers around her exchanged glances, unsure. Their queen was silent, conflicted. Kale's heart raced. He knew that one wrong move, one hint of aggression, could mean death for him and the child. Yet he did not flinch. He would not betray the trust the child had placed in him. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then, finally, the queen spoke again. Her voice was quieter, trembling with emotion she could not hide. You saved her?" Kale nodded. "Yes, she's alive because of me. I will not let anyone hurt her." The queen's glowing eyes softened further. She glanced at her child, who clung tightly to Kale, and then back at him. She saw something extraordinary. A human who had risked everything to protect an innocent life, not out of duty, not for reward, but because it was the right thing to do. That courage, that simple act of compassion, broke through centuries of hatred and fear. Kale held his ground, calm yet alert, knowing this moment could decide everything. The queen stepped closer, her massive presence overwhelming, yet there was no aggression in her movement. She lowered herself slightly to meet the child's gaze, then Kale's. "You have shown honor," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and disbelief. "I do not know why or how, but you will answer for this kindness." Kale swallowed hard. He didn't know what she meant by that, but he understood her meaning. She was no longer seeing him simply as the enemy. She was seeing him as something more, something capable of goodness, courage, and protection, even across the divide of war. For the first time, Kale felt a strange hope rising in his chest. Perhaps this encounter, terrifying as it was, could be the start of something more than survival. Perhaps this child, and this alien mother, could change the course of everything. And somewhere deep in the ruins, under the shadow of destruction, the battlefield felt less like a war zone and more like a place where miracles could begin. The ruined city was silent now, except for the soft whispers of the wind through broken walls and the distant echoes of battle far beyond. Kale knelt on the cracked ground, holding the small Xylian child close. Its tiny hands clutched his jacket, and its violet eyes blinked up at him. Still filled with fear, but now mixed with a faint sense of trust. Across from them, the Xylian mother, her massive form glowing softly in the early morning light, stood in a tense silence. Every muscle in her body was coiled with the instinct to strike, to reclaim her child by force. Yet she did not move. She watched Kale carefully, her piercing eyes searching his face for any hint of deception. "You saved her life," she said finally, her voice trembling, not with anger this time, but with an emotion Kale could not immediately identify. "Gratitude?" Confusion? Shock? Perhaps all three. No human has ever dared shown mercy like this before. Cale nodded slowly, keeping his voice steady. She's innocent. She doesn't deserve to die. I won't let anything happen to her. The mother's gaze softened further as she looked at her child, who nestled against Cale's chest. Cale could see her internal struggle, the balance between duty, pride, and the undeniable truth of what had happened. The child's life was safe because of him, a human. And yet, this truth clashed violently with everything the Queen had been taught. Everything her species believed about humans, that they were cruel, untrustworthy, and dangerous. The child stirred and looked up at Cale, a small, shy smile tugging at its lips. Cale smiled back softly, brushing a strand of violet hair from its face. The mother's eyes softened more, the first cracks in her armor of anger and suspicion appearing. She realized that her child's safety was more important than pride, revenge, or the expectations of her people. Cale's heart pounded. He did not move aggressively. He only stayed calm, patient, allowing the child to draw the mother's focus. I only want to protect her, he repeated gently. I am not your enemy, not in this moment, not here. For several long moments, the mother said nothing. Then, slowly, she stepped closer, her massive form looming over them, yet without threat. She lowered her eyes to her child, and Cale saw the love in her gaze, the fierce, unbreakable bond of a mother. But then her eyes met Cale's, and there was something new there, respect. Something almost human in its complexity. You are different, she murmured. No human I have ever known would risk themselves like this. For a Xylian child. Her glowing hands, capable of immense destruction, relaxed slightly at her sides. You are brave. And honorable. That is something I cannot ignore. Cale kept his focus on the child, but he could feel the tension easing. He had no idea what the mother would do next, but he knew this moment was pivotal. She could take her child by force. She could kill him where he knelt. Or she could make a choice, one that could change the course of their lives forever. The child reached up, its small fingers brushing Cale's cheek. He looked down at it, then up at the Queen. In that silent exchange, the mother seemed to understand something profound. Cale had proven his worth not with weapons, not with combat, but with courage and compassion. He had chosen life over hate, mercy over vengeance, and that choice could not be ignored. You saved her, the mother said again, softer this time. Her voice carried awe, sorrow, and something like hope. I cannot undo what you have done. Nor would I wish to, perhaps. Perhaps you are hers now. Perhaps you are mine in a way I cannot yet define. Cale's breath caught. He did not fully understand her words, but he sensed their meaning. The Queen, a warrior feared across worlds, was acknowledging him not as an enemy, not as a stranger, but as someone connected to her child in the deepest, most sacred way. The child smiled faintly, then buried its face into Cale's chest. Cale whispered softly, "We'll be safe now. You won't have to be afraid anymore." The Queen nodded, her glowing eyes lingering on them both. She had made her choice. She would honor the bond Cale had created with her child. She would not attack him, not now. And somehow, in the midst of this ruined, war-torn city, a fragile, beautiful connection had formed, one that transcended species, hatred, and war. For Cale, the weight of the battlefield and the fear of the hunt seemed to fall away, replaced by something far more powerful, hope. The child was safe. The mother was no longer an enemy in that moment. And in that quiet, tense morning, the first true promise of a new beginning flickered to life. The sun had climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the ruined city. Cale stood with the Xylian child pressed close to him, both of them wary but safe for the first time in days. Across from them, the Queen, the child's mother, stood with a calm he had never seen from her before. The war-hardened warrior who could command armies and destroy cities now looked at him not with rage, but with something far deeper, far more complex. "You have risked your life for her," she said. Her voice steady but gentle, carrying a weight that made Cale stop in his tracks. "You could have left her to die like so many others would. Yet you chose differently." Her glowing eyes met his. There was no accusation, no judgment, only recognition of the courage and humanity he had shown. Cale held the child tighter, feeling the soft warmth of its small body against his chest. He nodded. "I couldn't leave her. She's just a child. She didn't deserve to die. I promised I would protect her, and I will." For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. She studied him, searching for signs of deceit or weakness, but found none. She saw only honesty, strength, and a heart that had acted without thought of reward or fear of consequences. Slowly she stepped closer, the soldiers behind her lowering their weapons as they watched the silent exchange. "You are no longer just a human in my eyes," she said, her voice trembling slightly, as if the words themselves were difficult to speak. "You are hers, and in a way, you are mine." Cale froze, understanding the gravity of her declaration. She was not merely acknowledging him as a protector. She was claiming him as part of her world, part of her child's life, and part of a bond that went beyond war, species, or tradition. The soldiers behind her looked stunned, whispering among themselves. No human had ever earned such acknowledgement from their queen, let alone for saving a child. The child looked up at Cale, eyes wide with innocence and wonder. It reached for him, wrapping tiny arms around his waist. Cale smiled softly, brushing a strand of violet hair from its face. "We'll be safe now," he murmured. "I promise you." The queen's gaze softened further. She stepped fully into the light, her towering presence both intimidating and awe-inspiring. "You have shown bravery, honor, and compassion," she said, her voice echoing across the silent ruins. "These are qualities our species rarely expects from yours. And yet, here you stand, alive, unbroken, and worthy of trust. I will honor that." Cale felt a mix of relief and awe. For decades, humans and Xylians had been enemies, locked in a cycle of hatred and violence. To hear such words from one of their greatest leaders was unprecedented. And yet, here it was not just acknowledgement, but respect, even reverence. The queen knelt slightly, her glowing eyes meeting the child's. Then Cale's. "From this day forward, you will be her protector. Not by order, but by bond. Not as an enemy, but as one who has proven their worth. If anyone threatens her, they will answer to you, and you alone will decide her safety. Do you understand?" Cale swallowed hard. His heart raced, but he felt the weight of purpose settle on his shoulders. "I understand," he said firmly. "I will protect her with my life." The queen rose, her gaze sweeping over the soldiers behind her. "Let it be known," she commanded, "that this human is no longer an enemy. He is her guardian, recognized by me and by all who serve under me. Any who question this will face my judgment." Whispers spread through the ranks. The soldiers looked at Cale with a mixture of disbelief and respect. He had not only survived the battlefield, but he had also earned a place in a world he had been trained to consider hostile. A world that had never welcomed humans before. Cale's eyes met the child's once more. A tiny smile formed on its lips and it clung to him tightly. Cale felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief, pride, and an unshakable sense of responsibility. This bond was more than survival. It was trust. It was family. The queen stepped back slightly, her presence still commanding, yet her eyes softened with a maternal warmth Cale had never expected. "You have changed the course of many lives today," she said. "And perhaps the course of our two peoples." Cale looked at the child again, whispering softly, "We'll face whatever comes. Together." And for the first time in a long, long time, the battlefield felt like a place where hope could survive, where compassion could triumph over hatred, where a single human, through courage and kindness, could change the hearts of an entire species. The Xylian queen had declared it. Cale was no longer merely a soldier. He was a guardian, a protector, and a bridge between worlds. And in the child's soft, trusting gaze, he saw the reason why it all mattered.